Hello everyone. So I'm back, or rather this is part 2, or what did I call it? I call it part 1, let me see here. I call it part 0 because that's the introduction. Welcome to part 1 of my, I guess, vlog of touching up this Super Robot Wars kit, the Wildraubiter. I should have looked up how to pronounce it. Okay, so what I really haven't got a lot done, or rather, I haven't got a lot done that I wanted to. But, and honestly, I just did a lot of it right now. But I did get some stuff done, and I would like to show it off. So let's go ahead and focus on the first stuff. So, first, I want to talk about the shield. So, when I was taking this kit apart the first thing I did was I just disassembled. I'm doing it section by section. So right now I'm starting with the right arm. So I took it apart, washed the pieces. I'm thinking the strainer I was using to keep the pieces from going down was a little too small for one poly cap. So that poly cap is now gone. Thankfully though, I have a unhealthy amount of Gundam model kits. And with that, I have a ton of poly caps left over. So for a good while, for a little bit, I was going through and plugging in poly caps to see what this shield piece would fit in. And I found one that it fits enough. Now, I'm not sure how well this is going to work in practice. I'm really hoping the cement is going to hold it when it works. But so what I ended up doing was taking in the piece, shredding off the excess parts around it, and essentially fitting it back into where the missing polycap would go. So actually, polycaps on this kit are actually blue. This is a Bandai Gundam polycap in there on a Kotobukiya kit where all the polycaps are essentially blue. So sanded it, shaped it, cut it, and made sure it was compatible with this. So now that piece is done. The other thing I did, and this is what I do to all the kits, is I'll sit down and I'll sand off the nubs. I'll sand off pieces that and kind of clean it up, make it a little more presentable. So that's what I ended up doing for the arm right now. After that, I went in and I started gluing the pieces that needed to be glued. And for that, I use this Tamiya liquid cement here. Just a little brush of it. I'll show you real quick. A little brush right there. Just dip it on in and you're good to go. And that does it. That will hold the pieces together. Right now I have it sent. So yeah. So I did it to everything on this arm. All the pieces together, everything. It's still posable. You can still move the pieces around if you need to, because the arm joint is actually right there. So and the shield piece is still movable, but everything has been sandwiched together, and this black piece is what's holding it all together. So I'm gonna let that dry overnight. I don't like rushing drying stuff, so that's just how it is for me. Next is I had to paint some stuff. So if you look on the instructions here, or look right there, the back of the shield, or I guess the inside of the shield, is a kind of a gray color, or a blackish, grayish color. So I went ahead and right now it's drying. I hand painted that. Hand painting is definitely its own thing. If you like it, you like it. If not, it's not. But for detail work like that, I honestly don't care. And I rather do that than deal with masking it, because I just don't feel like masking off something that small. I am going to have to go back and kind of clean up the edges a bit, just remove some of the paint around the edges to make sure the white's not, or make sure the gray's not on there. Kind of make sure the paint's a little more consistent than it is, but for a first coat on there, it's not that bad. And otherwise, too, the shield actually takes up the majority of the center, so you really won't see a lot of the white stuff once it's painted over. or once I put the shield back on. And for that though, I use Tamiya's German Gray. I guess if you want, if you want to know, I personally use acrylic paints just because if I make a mistake or I can get off with water, and brushes are so much easier to clean off with acrylic than fighting enamel with a thinner and stuff. So I personally use Tamiya's acrylic paint, and German Gray is what I use for the inside of the shields. And I don't know why the there we go, that do it. Yeah, well, whatever. The next piece is on the wrist guard right here. There's a little green light on the back of the on the top of the forearm. So that is this right here, and I went ahead and dabbed in a little bit of green. Again, I used Tamiya. Now normally I would use like a clear green, but since I'm not priming anything and the back of it is red, I went ahead and just used a solid green. So normally how I would do it is I have a clear green and that will coat over like parts like effect parts and things like that. But I just don't feel like fighting primer to get into such a small space. So I went ahead and used a solid park green. And what I ended up doing was taking a little dab of it with a toothpick and just placing it in there. If you want to do that though, and know this, that I am placing a dab of paint in a very small spot. Again, this is very tiny, so the paint is just going to be just sitting there until it dries. So what I would recommend is don't leave it laying flat, leave it kind of like how I have it, facing up. Get yourself an alligator clip and something to prop it up with. For me, I'm using this from a painting stand, again a Tamiya painting stand. I just can't help it. I like Tamiya's paints. Tamiya's painting products are really good, and that should help kind of settle the paint in so it doesn't splash over or drift down to one side. I may have to clean it up a little bit, but honestly, since it is such a small detail, I may not bother. But that is about it. Again, I didn't get as far as I wanted to. I at least wanted to get to a point where I would have some light weathering done on it. But I guess I didn't get to that yet. So, with that in mind, we'll be the next update should hopefully have the forearm either completed or nearly weathered. And I'll be going over what I use for weathering when I get to that. And I'll explain how I weather the stuff. But until then, I hope you enjoy the update, and soon the kit here will be up to proper specs. So thank you for dropping by, and I hope you enjoyed the video.